Hello and welcome to Education Express, my dear friends. After completing the concept of wealth, now we move on to the concept of welfare. What exactly do you mean by the term welfare? Welfare means well being of a person or a society or a country. That means when I talk about welfare, I talk about the well being of the people, well being of an individual, or a well being of a society. Now, when we talk about welfare, we can further divide welfare into economic welfare and non economic welfare. When we are talking about economic welfare, we are talking about the income, we are talking about the standard of living, we are talking about production, we are talking about consumption, and the various other facilities with respect to the rewards that can be paid to the factor of production. And when we talk about non-economic welfare, that means we are talking about the justice that prevails in the society, the environment that can be offered to the people at large. We are talking about well-being, we are talking about health, we are talking about other things which are not directly connected to economic welfare. Since study of economic is always related to understanding the economic activities, hence we take into consideration only the economic welfare of the people at large. That means our studies would not talk about the prevailing law, justice, equality, brotherhood, etc. Those are all non-economic welfares. So within the domain of economic welfare, we are going to study only that part of the welfare which has got something to do with economy or which is having any economic value. As we know that wealthier the nation, definitely the welfare of the people of that nation is likely going to be more as compared to a nation which is not wealthy. In short, the welfare of an individual completely depends upon how wealthy an individual is. So, wealth in true spirit would decide your welfare. But there are many economists who believe that wealth should not alone be the yardstick for the measurement of the welfare of the people, because for the purpose of earning wealth, there are many other activities which could be an antisocial activity, probably may give you a wealth, but definitely it will not happen at the welfare of the society. Although, after leveling so many critics against the means and the methods of earning wealth, but yet when we analyze and when we see the total amount of merit that the wealth has are far more as compared to the total number of demerits that can be attached to the measures of earning wealth. In short, the bottom line would be the welfare of the nation would certainly be decided by the wealth earned by that nation. And wealth can be earned in such a way so that it should not lead to inequality among the people. Because inequality would lead to social injustice would lead to an exploitation of the laborers, which would definitely not lead to a welfare of the people at large. Having said that, wherever there is an anxiety to earn more wealth, some amount of injustice would surely be there. Some amount of exploitation would surely be there. Dividing the wealth among the rich and the poor will surely be there. Inequitable distribution of wealth is there worldwide. So, my dear friends, it is no doubt in saying that the quantum of wealth decides the welfare, and the country which possesses more wealth would definitely bring more welfare to the citizen of that particular country. So, my dear friends, when we discuss about wealth, in short, what is wealth? So, wealth is nothing but the well-being of a person or a society. We can have an economic wealth, or probably we can have an economic welfare or a non-economic welfare. When I'm talking about non-economic welfare, we are talking about social justice, we are talking about law, order, etc., which has got nothing to do with economy. So basically, we take into consideration only the economic aspect of welfare. That means, what about the standard of living of the people? What about the social security that they have? What about their earning? What about their consumption? What about their production? And of course, yes, the distribution of the wealth in the society. However, one must understand that though we know that more the wealth belongs to a nation, definitely more would be the welfare. But whenever the wealth is not divided equally in the society, it leads to certain anti-social element. It leads to certain division of people among the rich and the poor in the society. After knowing and analyzing all the aspects of and the merits and the demerits of the wealth, we certainly conclude that wealthier the nation, more would be the welfare of the people of that particular country. After completing the concept of wealth, then we did welfare. After completing the concept of welfare, we now move on to capital. Capital is very, very interesting and very, very important. One must know what exactly is a capital. The first thing is that capital is one of the factor of production. It is a man-made factor of production. Capital means those goods which are produced with the objective of earning more income. That means capital is nothing but those capital goods or those resources or those objects with which a further wealth or an income can be created. In short, my dear friend, capital is a man-made factor of production. The demand for capital is not a direct demand, whereas the demand for capital is indirect demand. It is a derived demand. We don't need capital, we don't need machinery, we need machinery to produce more goods and services, to earn more income, to create more wealth. So one must understand that only that part of the wealth, only that part of the wealth which is employed for the purpose of earning more wealth, for the purpose of earning more income, can be regarded as a capital. Capital is a man-made factor of production. Capital is inactive unless and until it is put to use by a labor or a human being. My dear friend, one must understand that there is a various analyzation and types of capital. But the bottom line would be capital is a man-made factor of production. It receives reward in the form of interest. Undoubtedly, capital are those goods which are used for the purpose of earning income. They could be machinery, tools, equipment, building, plant, etc. Could be anything. But most importantly, they will contribute to production. They will receive reward in the form of interest, and definitely they will help to earn more income. When we analyze the term capital, it further gets divided into its different types. So while discussing about the capital, we spoke about that part of goods and services that part of goods that are going to help us for the purpose of earning more income could be called as a capital. At the same time, one must not forget that we can have a human capital also. That means the skills and the experience of the laborers cannot be sold or purchased in the market. They cannot be offered as a collateral for obtaining a loan, but those would also be called as a capital. Also, when we talk about capital, what about the financial assets that we invest into, shares, etc.? Those are all called as a financial assets. They also help us earn money. Like for example, investment in shares would yield dividend. Investment in bonds and debentures would yield interest. So those are all called as a financial capital. My dear friends, in short, when we talk about economics, capital means those man-made goods, those man-made utilities which will help us earn more income or which can participate in the process of production, which can contribute in production, will be called as a capital. Few features of capital would be, sir, capital is a man-made factor of production. Capital contributes in the production. Without capital, production is not possible. You need to have certainly a contribution of capital for the purpose of production. Like for example, without land, without building, without factory, without machinery, practically the production of all those goods or services seems to be impossible. So capital plays a very, very dominant and important role in the process of production. And we have human capital, that is basically an experience and the talent and the skill of the workers, which also goes along with the terminology of capital. We also talk about the financial capitals, that means investment in shares and debentures, which will help us earn dividend and interest. At the same time, when we classify different types of capital, so we talk about fixed capital and a circulating capital. What do you mean by fixed capital? Sir, capital which can be used for a long period of time, over and over, again and again, again and again, again and again, will be called as a fixed capital. That means this is that part of investment or that part of capital which is used for the purpose of production again and again. Like for example, machinery. We use machinery for the production of goods again and again, and it will keep going on for a long period of time. That is why they are called fixed assets or fixed capital. They remain with us for a long period of time and can be reused again and again in the process of production for the purpose of contribution to the production. After that, we have circulating capital. What are circulating capital? They are the one which can be used just once. They can be used just once. For example, raw material. My raw material can be used once for the purpose of conversion of raw material into finished goods. That means they are the input which will get transformed into the output. For example, diesel. When you are using machinery, so machinery is run on either diesel or a petrol. So machinery can be used for a long period of time. Machinery can be used again and again, again and again. What about diesel? So diesel can be used just once. Petrol can be used just once. Coal can be used just once. Electricity can be used just once. But what about the motor? Definitely the motor can be used again and again. Alright, so that's how the differentiation between the fixed capital and the circulating capital. Then we have sunk capital and a floating capital. What do you mean by sunk capital? A capital which can be put to use only for one purpose. For example, let us say I have installed an elevator in my factory. The elevator takes me up to third floor and again brings me down. So from ground floor to third floor and third floor to ground floor. There is only one purpose of that elevator, just to elevate me to first, second or third floor of my choice. That is what is called as a sunk capital. Whereas if you talk about laptop, if you talk about computer, that is called as a floating capital. So why? It can be used for a multiple purpose. If I am shifting my factory from Mumbai to Bangalore, definitely I can take my computer, I can take my laptop, but definitely it not be possible for me to take the escalators or to take the elevators along with me. That will be extremely difficult. So my dear friends, sunk capital is that capital which will have a very limited purpose or a limited use or a single purpose use. I'm not saying it will be used only once, but the purpose is just once. So how to differentiate between a fixed capital, circulating capital, sunk capital and a floating capital? So when I am talking about fixed capital, that means the amount is invested, it can be used again and again and again, like in case of machinery, like in case of tools, right? What about circulating capital? So circulating capital can be used just once, single purpose use or single time use, only once. Diesel, petrol, coal, they are all single time use. Once they are used, they are already exhausted. When I am talking about sunk capital, here the amount is invested in a capital in such a way so that it will have only single purpose, as I gave an example of an elevator. Whereas when we are talking about floating capital, that means it will have a multiple purpose. It can be used, it can be shifted, etc, etc, etc. After that, we have a remunerating capital and an auxiliary capital. As we know that there are several factors of production who contribute to production. So we have a laborers, our staff, and we need to meet their expectation also by paying them salary, wages, etc. So when we pay reward to factor of production, the reward paid to them in the form of wages, the reward paid to them in the form of maybe clothing, maybe food, or probably something else. Such reward is what is called as a remunerative capital. What are auxiliary capital? As you know, when the laborers are working in the factory, they need a support from machinery. They work on machinery. They work with the help of tools. Those tools help them enhance their productivity. Those tools protect them. They are the safety measures, probably save them, protect them, enhance their productivity, help and contribute in the production. They act as a secondary role, henceforth they are called as an auxiliary capital. So tools, equipments, and all those other accessories which the labor use in performance of their contribution in the production is called as auxiliary capital. So we know what is a capital. We also discussed in detail what do you mean by fixed capital and a circulating capital. We also discussed about the sunk capital and the floating capital, remunerative capital and auxiliary capital. Then we have material capital and a personal capital. It was Professor Thomas who came out with the new concept of material capital and a personal capital. Now, material capital are those capital which we can see, which we can feel, which we can touch, which can help or contribute in the process of production, like plant, machinery, furniture, building, equipment, tools, blast furnace, etc. So, what about personal capital? Personal capital are those personal qualities, that skill, that talent which a laborer probably may possess, and he may use his experience, his skill, his talent to discharge his duty to contribute in the production. So that capital is what is called as personal capital. For example, art of calligraphy, art of painting, art of writing, art of singing, they are all different arts which are absolutely a personal in nature, henceforth classified as a personal capital. Then we have money capital, we have real capital, and we have debt capital. See, when we talk about money, demand for money is not a direct demand, it is a derived demand. Money, only that portion of money which can help us earn income will be called as a capital. Only that portion of money. The other part of the money which is lying idle in my treasury will be not called as a capital. I have 10 lakh rupees, of which 4 lakh rupees I purchased the plant and 6 lakh rupees I have kept idle in my cupboard. Only 4 lakh rupees which has helped you to buy a plant, which will help you to earn additional income, which will also contribute to the process of production, will be called as a capital. The other part of 6 lakhs which is lying in your cupboard, in your treasury, would or cannot be called as a capital because it has never been a part of process of my production. So my dear friend, one must understand, money capital is basically a capital which is also called as a financial capital. It is only that part of the capital which will help us, only that part of the money which can help us earn additional income will be called as a capital. When I am talking about real capital, it means real capital would mean the real investments in the physical assets in the form of land, in the form of machinery, in the form of factories, in the forms of shed, in the forms of equipment, in the form of furnaces. So those are the real investments or a real capital which will actually help in enhancing the production, which will help to earn more income. Only that part of the capital or that part of the investment or that part of the money or that part of the wealth which help us earn additional income can be regarded as a capital. So real capital in economy would be in the real physical investment that we invest in order to enhance our earning, to increase our earning or increase our income would be called as real capital. My dear friend, capital is a man-made factor of production. Capital means those man-made goods which can help you to earn more income. Capital is basically classified into various types. We can have, just now what we did, fixed capital and a circulating capital, floating capital and sunk capital. We did remunerative capital and auxiliary capital. We did material capital and a personal capital. We did money capital, real capital and a debt capital. Debt capital is basically something which will give you a title to an income. Like for example, if I invest into government promissory notes, bonds, debentures, what is the main objective? The main objective is to earn income. See, when the government will borrow money from you, so government will pay you interest, and the same money would be utilized for the purpose of productive activities like construction of maybe bridge, construction of port, construction of railways, new lines for railways. So those are going to contribute to the production. At the same time, you are going to earn interest as an income, and that is what is called as a debt capital. My dear friends, studying capital is not difficult. Studying its types is also not difficult. You have to understand the objective of each of them to make yourself very subject specific. When I spoke to you today about capital, as I told you, capital is a man-made factor of production. It is a factor of production because it contributes to the production. And because it contributes in the production, it will surely receive a reward. It will receive reward in the form of interest. So those people who are employing the capital in the process of production, what do they expect? So they expect income in the form of interest. Remember, you have a human capital also, you have a financial capital also. And other classification, as what we have discussed so far, is the fixed capital and the circulating capital. We discussed the sum capital and floating capital, remunerative capital and auxiliary capital, personal capital and material capital, money capital, real capital, debt capital, and after that we have production and consumption capital. What are production capital? Of course, sir, when the labor will work in the process of production, they need machinery, they need building, they need factory. So machinery, building, factory, they are all production capital. They help a labor to contribute in the production. A labor becomes active only with the help of this capital and feels himself more safe, secure, and can enhance his productivity. That is why we call it as a production capital. Not only that, in order so that the labor can discharge his duty with lots of confidence, the labor will need a regular amount of energy in the form of food, in the form of water, sanitized or hygienic conditions. So basically, to provide all that thing, make sure that he gets food, to make sure that he gets necessary things which is fit for the consumption. So that is likely going to help him keep him in good mood, give him necessary energy to be productive so that he can discharge his duties with lots of productivity and to enhance the production also. So those are called as a consumption capital. You know that a labor would work or contribute in production for a simple reason, that even he has his aspirations and wants. Wants he'll be able to accomplish only after contributing to production. So while contributing to production, the reward he expects that can be used in the way of consuming the things like food, water, clothes, other safety measures which will protect him and enhance his productivity also. Besides that, we have internal capital and an external capital. The word internal means the capital which is arranged or could have been arranged within the country by investment from the domestic institutions, domestic investors, high net investors, HNIs, bank, financial institutions, and of course, yes, we, the household community, who can actually form a huge amount of saving, because what is earned, the whole amount of that is never consumed. So part of it is always saved. Those savings are mobilized into an investment called as capital. And when I'm talking about an external capital, it means we are making an arrangement of capital from other countries. Either a foreign bank is going to help us out, or the foreign country is going to help us out, or a foreign investor is going to take a keen interest in our project. Exim Bank, bank from loan from World Bank, a recent deal between Reliance Industries and Facebook about Reliance selling approximately 10% of its holding in Jio to Facebook is a way or an arrangement of foreign capital. That means foreigners or a foreign country or a multinational company is interested in acquiring a stake in an Indian company, which will bring in lots and lots of foreign currency, and that is what is called as a foreign capital. My dear friends, today what we have discussed so far is about welfare. Welfare is well-being of a person, well-being of a society, well-being of a people at large. And welfare could be economic welfare and non-economic welfare. We discussed a lot about that. We discussed a lot about capital also. Now we are going to discuss something about money. Everyone knows what is money. Money is a matter of function for. First thing is, money is a medium of exchange. So what are the peculiarity or peculiar characteristics of money? Sir, in economic, money includes currency, money include coins, and we know that coins and currencies are the legal tender which are issued by the Central Bank of India. Oh, sorry, Central Bank. In India, we specifically call it Reserve Bank of India. World over, the currency of a country is issued by its central bank, and it is legally binding on all the citizens to have a general acceptability of that money. So money is recognized or gain power because of its general acceptability. One more thing one must understand, that nowadays with the evolution of money from the primitive time till the modern time, we have plastic money also, not just currency but the plastic money that is in terms of credit card. We have virtual money also, like for example bitcoins. So what is more acceptable, what is more generally commonly acceptable, a money is going to get its features from there. So one of the most peculiar feature of money would be its general acceptability. Second thing is, money also include demand deposits. Now what are demand deposits? It's the money which is lying in the banks and which can be withdrawn by me at any point of time. It's called money at demand, or whenever I demand I can get my money. Those are demand deposits. So in simple words, money would mean all the coins, all the currencies, as well as the demand deposits which are lying in the bank, which can be called at my own demand, my own will, my own wish, would be the scope or the constituents of money. The characteristics of the money could be, so money, anything can be measured in terms of money. Money is known from its general acceptability. That means since it is acceptable by all the people, why? Sir, it is something which is a legal tender issued by the central bank of the country. So it's binding on all of us to accept that. Henceforth, it has a general acceptability. Not only that, it is one of the most liquid assets. It is practically not possible for us to realize the building, sell the building and convert it into a money. But money can be converted into building at any point of time. Money can be converted into any asset, but all the other assets cannot be converted into money in a short span of time. So money enjoys one of the most powerful feature, that it is liquidity. That means money can be converted into cash. Money itself is a cash. Other assets cannot be converted into cash as fast how fast money can be converted into any other assets. So because of its powerful feature of liquidity, money has an edge over all the other assets. Besides that, my dear friend, we will also take into consideration, after going studying money, let's have welfare, well-being of a person or a society. Economic welfare, non-economic welfare, we have already discussed about it. After that, what is capital? What are different types of capital? We have discussed about capital and different types of capital. Among different types of capital, we have fixed capital and a circulating capital. We have a floating capital and a sum capital. We have remunerative capital and auxiliary capital. We have personal capital and material capital. We have money capital, real capital, debt capital, production capital, consumption capital, internal capital and external capital. After that, we read what exactly is money, what are the features of money, what are the constituents of money. So my dear friends, after completing welfare, after completing capital, after going through money, which we know the features of general acceptability and liquid asset, we now move on to how to differentiate between capital and money, capital and wealth, capital and income. But before that, let us understand what exactly do you mean by the term income and the meaning of the term production. Income. What do you mean by income, my dear friends? So a simple answer to this question would be, sir, reward which is earned by all the factors of production for their contribution in the production. We know that in economic, there are only 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital and entrepreneur, that is organization. Land, labor, capital and organization. Sir, do they contribute to production? Of course, sir, they contribute to production. In fact, they are the only contributor to production. Because they contribute in the production, in lieu of that, because I contribute in lieu of that, what do I demand? So I definitely demand a remuneration. In lieu of my contribution in the production. Sir, I am a labor. So you are employing me. I am ready to work in the factory. I also work wherever you tell me to do as per your demand. But sir, at the end of the day, when my work gets over, I will demand my wages. That is a remuneration that you have to compensate me. It's only for that compensation. It's only for that remuneration. I am giving myself available to you to definitely help you produce goods and services. Same is the case of land also. A landowner gives his land to be used for the purpose of production of goods and services. For example, I am a landowner and I am giving my land to a farmer. I am a landowner, I am giving my land to a factory owner who wants to set up a factory on my land. So definitely, in lieu of using my land, you will have to certainly compensate me, remunerate me, give me something in return. And that something would definitely be an income for me. So reward which are paid to all the factors of production, as we know that there are 4 factors of production, so they all will earn a different reward. Land will earn rent, labor will earn wages. What about capital? So capital will earn interest. An organizer, an entrepreneur, a businessman who undertake the risk of arranging all these things and combining it in the best possible mixture so that an organization can discharge its duties of satisfying the want of the people by rendering them, giving them, producing them goods and services of their taste, preference and nature, whereby taking the risk of arranging, organizing, planning, directing, staffing, coordinating all these activities is an entrepreneur who take the risk, and in return what he expect? He expect profit from the business. So all the factors of production we have: land, labor, capital and entrepreneur. That means organization. Land will receive reward in the form of rent. Labor will receive reward in the form of wages. Capital will receive reward in the form of interest, and organization will receive reward in the form of profit. So summation of all the rewards paid to the factor of production automatically become income. So what is income? So income is a reward paid to factor of production for their contribution in the production. Income is a reward paid for my contribution in the production, and each factor input will get different income depending upon his contribution in the production. One of the most important concept in economy is production. And what do you mean by production? So my dear friends, production means creation of utilities. That means creating a utility will be termed as production. As we know, utility is defined as the capacity to satisfy one's want. So when I'm saying I'm engaged in production, it means I'm engaged in giving utility to a particular raw material. Now, when a raw material is converted into finished goods, so finished goods has a utility to satisfy the wants of the people. So one of the unique characteristics of production is that it transforms the raw material into finished goods. That means the identity of the raw material is changed to finished goods. Trust me guys, it is a very long process, and the process of production involves and engages all the factors of production. See, all the factors of production will contribute something from their side to production, and that's how something else would emerge. That means the goods and the services, which will definitely help to satisfy the want and the aspiration of the people at large. Today, all the factor inputs, or rather you can say contributors to the contributors to the production, that is the factors of production, they have their own aspiration, they have their own desire, they genuinely have their own wish. Now these factor owners who are owning this factor of production, or maybe the factor of production themselves, they would certainly receive a reward. The reward would definitely be in the form of any monetary terms, Now, this reward will be used for the purpose of purchasing those goods and services so that they can satisfy their wants. So, when I analyze what exactly is the production, so it means creation of utility where there is a transformation of input and the result what I get is an output. So what happened is a process where an input is transformed into an output or a functional relationship between the input and the output in a process is what is called as production. For a layman, for me, in economic, in a very simple language, if I have to ever express what is production, my answer would be, sir, production means creation of utilities. It is a process where all the factors of production will contribute their part to transform raw material into finished goods, which can help to satisfy the want of the people. Of course, that is what is called as a production. Now, what exactly do you mean by the term market? Market means it should not be restricted only to the area. It should not be confined only to the area. Market is a place where we see there are a lot of buyers and lot many sellers who would negotiate a transaction among themselves for the goods or the services that needs to be done in a very competitive environment. We have already done a chapter before on market where we have focused that market just should not be restricted to the area, because wherever there are buyers and the sellers, the market will get its spread right till there where there are buyers and the sellers. What is more important for a market to be present is there should be a buyer and the seller. There must be a commodity. There must be a transaction. The transaction should be in a competitive environment and it should be about the buying and the selling of goods or services. When all these features are met, we can simply say that of course, yes, there is a market. So what are the characteristics features for a market to exist? So there must be a buyers and the sellers. Those buyers and the sellers must be interested in transacting. That means there has to be a negotiation to transact for goods and services in a competitive environment for a price. That is what is called as or transpires into market. Market is not restricted to place. Nowadays, the modern market is beyond someone's imagination, and you can connect between a buyer and the seller a relationship. A relationship which will definitely emerge out of the inherent rules, culture, tradition of the society that one needs to obey, abide, follow, comply. That's how a market will emerge. So, my dear friends, a market is not just restricted to a place, but somewhere you can say where the buyers and the sellers would negotiate a transactions for the goods and services in a competitive environment at a reasonable price is what is called as a market. Besides that, we are also interested in knowing what exactly are the factors of production. So my dear friend, that earlier also we discussed, we know that those factors which contribute to production are called as factors of production. In economic, we have land, labor, capital and entrepreneur. Land is a free gift of nature. Land is not man-made. It is naturally given to us as a gift by the nature. Labor, of course, is a man-made factor of production. Capital is an artificial, again, man-made factor of production. And organization is again a man-made factor of production. Though we know that few of them are natural, few are man-made, and few are men themselves in the process of production. But remember, my dear friends, all are equally important in the process of production. No single factor of production on himself can ever claim that I am sufficient or I am enough to produce everything what is needed. No, my dear friends, all are important, all are relevant, though the importance of some of the factors would be far more important than as compared to the other factor of production. What I meant is the relevance of one of the factor may be more important as compared to others, but all are likely required for the purpose of production. I cannot eliminate few factors of production. That is just not possible. Of course, the relevance of each factor of production may not be equal, maybe uneven, maybe unequal. But their significance is that they all will be needed. Eliminating some of them will definitely create a hurdle in the process of production. One more thing, what is needed is not the factor but the services of the factor. I don't need labor, I need service of a labor. I don't need capital, I want capital which can function. I want capital which can serve. I want machinery which can operate. So basically what is more important is the services of the factor of production than the factor themselves. One more thing which is prominent and important is that the demand for these factors of production is not a direct demand. It is a derived demand. We demand for factor of production so that we can produce goods and services, and these goods and services can satisfy the wants of the people. And finally, if you notice, all the factors of production, they are tangible in nature. They can be seen, they can be touched, they can be felt. So my dear friends, factors of production are those factors which are contributing to the production, though their relevance may differ, though their importance may differ, though the degree with which they perform may differ, but all of them are simultaneously required, are uniformly required, are needed for the purpose of production to enhance my productivity. They are tangible in nature. Remember, my dear friends, more than factor, what is more important is the services of the factor. The services of the factor is far more important as compared to the factor himself. A labor is not important, but the services of the labor is important. So what is more important is the service of the factor of production than the factor themselves. And lastly, the demand for factors of production is not a direct demand. It is a derived demand. I don't need factor directly. I need factor so that I can produce goods and services which can help me satisfy the want of the people. With this, my dear friends, we have completed most of the things of the chapter. The last few things relevant with respect to consumption in its types, sustainable consumption and an economy, those are very small part. Last but not least would be done in my final lecture. Thank you so much for watching the video. Until now, everything going so smooth. I wish you a very, very happy studying. Thank you so much, my dear friends.